Thank you for tuning in to Cop with Comic. I'm Brian Koppen, and we're with comic Gabby Jordan Brown. Gabby Jordan Brown, how the hell are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for coming on, because you're such a hip soccer mom.
The hippest of all the soccer moms.
But you're not as hip as some other soccer moms, because you had to put underscores in your Twitter name, which is hip_soccer_mom on Twitter. And then on Instagram, you got it there. You got the hip soccer mom on Instagram. You were hipper than them because you got on Instagram first.
I did. I think Kanye West initially didn't get his own handle or something, and he had to pay someone to give it to him.
Yes,
so
when you're
I don't know. Maybe
that's
what's next for me. Yeah, it's gonna be get the underscores out of my handle, get someone to hand me the rights to those.
Yeah, she'll get so famous that she will be able to buy the domain name. And what you're going to get famous from is stand-up comedy, I guess, from Anne Hathaway Presents, which is your temporary virtual mic on Thursdays.
I suppose so. I mean, yeah, it's a super fun, super supportive, women, LGBT friendly, open mic. It's being done on Zoom every Thursday at 8, and it's me and a very funny comedian, Aaron Abelot-Clemens, and we just try and make everyone laugh, make weird segues, and our buy-in, I guess you could say, is that our quote-unquote co-host is the Academy Award-winning actress Anne Hathaway, but somehow she never shows up. I mean, it's so weird.
I love that shit. So was that something you were doing before the quarantine?
Yeah, we were doing it at the pit in the little pit attic, which is probably the tiniest space in the world. It was kind of one of those things you're going to look back on in 2 years, and it was we did that, and then a pandemic happened. It's so small and stuffy, but it was so much fun. I mean, there were 20 people packed into this one tiny attic, so the laughs were just... I mean, you do outdoor shows now, and laughs dissipate into the air, or at least that's how I justify it if I bomb.
Let's hope that, you go back to the pit after the quarantine, and you're also doing a night of funny jokes, which is you and Nick Cohen.
Yeah, that's a more Nick and I, we've been good friends for a long time, and we started doing some experimental 2-person improv. And by experimental, I basically just mean weird. I mean, it was just wacky, and it's just me. And experimental makes it sound so avant-garde, but I'm pretty sure it was just we were just having fun on stage, the two of us. And then when quarantine hit, I think we kind of tried to make the Zoom medium something that fit the kind of things we would have been doing in person, but also open ourselves up to using the new medium. So we wrote a choose your own adventure for one person, which is crazy. We wrote I think there might have been 100 paths for this one guy to go down one path, but it was fun. It was worth it. We're doing a couple more things coming up.
And you had Angela Palladino on one of those.
Yeah, that was the last in-person show. That was a blast.
Yeah, that was one of the super spreader events that I hear about. Everybody was telling me about their big last show. And even I think Janelle Draper may be on, and I think she does a show with her sister who's a health expert, and they did it right when the thing was fucking about ready to hit. And they were like, should we go on? And I think the health expert was like, yeah, let's go on. And so they did their thing. So it's nice to know that even when you have the approval of your health expert sister, it's it's let's host a super spreader event, because you had people like Dylan Adler on some of these earlier shows, and so it's nice to know. Yeah, it's nice to know that you're kind of keeping these going, because I see on one of these it goes, because improv was meant to be typed.
Yeah, that last show was in March, and it was literally right before lockdown. And what ended up, it was around the time, I feel when open mics were first starting to shut down because of COVID, no one was shaking hands anymore. People were using elbows, and I was sanitizing my hands after every set. And then slowly the lines for mics started getting less long. And at first I was an idiot. I was like, these lines are, so great. I can just walk into any open mic. That's wonderful.
I'm like Jerry Seinfeld. I can pop into any show.
I can just pop in and do a set at the Cellar. Let's see.
And then later on, I see a picture of you with a face visor. So lines were short, but you took it seriously. Now that now it's
Yeah.
in parks and stuff, you got your, was that a Mr. Mike or something, and you got your face shield.
Yeah, well, I think when lockdown hit, or at least I feel like when everyone collectively, at least that I know, started reading, articles and kind of like making themselves like anxiety dream by like reading Twitter every night, like I was, it was became something I definitely take it super seriously now, and
Right.
you want to keep doing comedy, and I think park shows are, pretty safe. You see hosts like wiping down the mic between sets, and they try and social distance, and everything's outdoors, and people wear their masks often except when they're on stage, but
Yeah,
every other time. So
yeah, I love that. We should just partition these parks into little comedy clubs, and the future of comedy now that New York City is dead, as us transplants like to say. But real quick, we're going to try to fold it into a topic of mutual interest, which is Gossip fucking Girl.
oh, the
It sounds
best.
like, yeah, you're rewatching it recently. I've rewatched it several times, and Sebastian Stan was on there, aka Carter Basin. So when my nieces started falling in love with Sebastian Stan, I was like, that's Carter fucking Basin on Gossip Girl, who was that kind of guy who'd come into town, and they were like, Carter Basin is back in town. I mean, Gossip Girl was just amazing. Like, how much do you love it, and why?
I love Gossip Girl so much. Yeah, the Carter Bazin character is hilarious to me because it's never explained why he's so mysterious, other than that he has an insane name, and
Yes.
Sebastian Stan is like a brilliant actor who sells
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
But he dates Serena, and it feels like he's pretty supportive of her. He's just a little shit. You don't know what underground dealings he's a part of. I know
Yeah.
he scams Nate with the poker game, but also, Nate, maybe don't join an insane poker game when you're 16
Yes.
years old. I think Carter Bazin is much maligned, but
But also, I mean, it was the same kind of thing as what the Michelle Trachtenberg character would be like. Oh, do you know what's her name's back in town? And so whenever somebody comes back in from out of town, they are immediately shady.
yeah, it feels almost very theatrical in that way, because you see these like August Osage County type plays where it's like, this stranger is back in town after having much history with this American family,
Uh,
and they have all of these secrets that they're bringing with them from this mysterious place out of town where they went, which is how the entire pilot starts. It's like Serena is this big
oh
mystery, and
yeah.
she's coming back from quote unquote out of town.
I love that. And now that all these transplants are coming back from out of town, they're all be some dark, shady motherfuckers. Yeah, when you actually flesh out their backstory, what do these people do out of town? It's like, I don't know, they stayed upstate with their parents.
Yeah, well, I know in season 6, Serena tries to escape her life by like stooping that Connecticut billionaire or whatever with the vitamin company.
Oh
But
yeah.
I think what's weird about Gossip Girl is that so many things happen where you do a rewatch and then someone reminds you about a plot line that's coming up, and you're like, that's so crazy that I forgot that in the shuffle of 20 other crazy plot lines.
Yeah,
But it works.
I chose to forget it because a lot of times yeah, once a stupid character gets introduced, I'll be like, I'll kind of reach for the fast forward button because like I've seen this thing 2, 3 times or whatever, whatever show it is. I'll be like, I don't like this character. I don't like the character's mother that they brought in for that episode, so I'll skip an entire episode because I know how bad that storyline is.
Which mother are you
Well, just in,
referring
in any show. So
Any,
like right
yeah.
right now I'm watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine again, and so
Mm.
whenever the Pontiac Bandit comes back in, I'm like, all right, I've already seen this episode. I know he's going to double cross Jake again. Like let me fast forward the whole fucking episode. And a lot of times they try to do that. They try to introduce again, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Jimmy Smits is the dad, and they're always trying to. And usually that's where it fucks up when they try to introduce a character who maybe doesn't fit with the show. Like you want to see Dan and Serena, you want to see Chuck and Blair. It's Blair, right?
Yeah,
Chuck?
Chuck and Blair, and then
Yeah,
Nate.
Leighton Meester. Like you want to see these people interact. You don't necessarily want to see the vitamin guy from Connecticut.
Yeah, you don't. And I mean, there's a couple of pretty interesting supporting characters who I think add a lot, and then there's definitely some supporting characters who detract. I think you're right about that. I think it's whatever is lodged in my memory is what was good, and whatever leaves my memory is what was bad. Like when Nate dates that woman Juliet Sharp, I forgot about it for my entire life. And I'm sure in 5 years, when I'm on my deathbed or whatever, well, I mean, it won't be 5 years. Hopefully it'll be like 50 years. But if someone's like, yeah, remember when Nate dated Juliet Sharp? I'll be like, no, I don't remember that. But I remember when Blair and Dan dated, which like it was a controversial plotline, but now
I loved it. I loved it. They were good.
I thought they were. I thought that Dan actually understood and loved her.
Yeah, and she was actually a little bit more intellectual. Like, wasn't she reading like fancy books? And somebody like Serena would never do that.
Serena liked the idea that she would read fancy books. Serena's character is hilarious to me because she wants so badly to be good. And I think the whole point of Gossip Girl, it's kind of the show that walked so Succession could run, I think. Maybe it walked, ran, flew, and then stumbled to the ground and didn't stick the landing. But it's kind of the show that shows you that wealth disparity is something like when you're on the top of it, there's no real way to be inherently good. Because you have kind of inherently pillaged the earth if you keep that level of wealth.
If you just keep it going. Yeah, if you don't give it away or you don't try to do something good with it, you're just part of the problem.
Which is why I think Chuck and Blair are so beloved, because ultimately they're the two people who admit, like, look, we're awful and we are entitled to be awful due to our family fortune. And I think Serena and Nate are sort of kindred spirits in that they both are absolutely sheltered, completely out of touch with reality, and they at the same time want desperately to be perceived as good.
Yeah. And so somebody like Serena would be an amazing Instagram model because she would, as an influencer, she would have that stack of books behind her in the bookshelf, but she never had read it.
Serena would be selling like those fit tea products in 10 years, like 10 years from when the show ended, you know, like she would be on Instagram being like, love my husband Dan, but you know what I love more? Sugar Bear vitamins. Use discount code Serena to get these Sugar Bear vitamins.
Dude, yeah, they should do it. It's a reboot where she goes to the Fire Festival.
I've heard that they are doing a Gossip Girl reboot.
Good.
Which is very exciting.
Yeah, I couldn't even believe that. Like, if they tried to do that via Zoom or something, how would that work? Like, how do you show the trappings of wealth? I guess they would do tours of their new homes or their new loft spaces in Soho. But I guess, like, and as these transplant return to the New York City comedy scene, you know, they won't really have that shady backstory of, you know, Carter Basin or something like that. But I mean, do you think New York City is just going to return, and is the comedy scene leading the way with its park shows?
You know, it's interesting. I think that I don't actually mind where transplants go and don't go. I think the issue is larger in that, so I'm from New York originally, and we've all seen a lot of change in that, you know, developers, I think, sort of made New York a bit of a playground for people who ultimately never intended to be here very long, but they built a, you know, facsimile of a place where you could live your entire life if you're that kind of person. And then, of course, when March and April hit, the city unfortunately did look kind of barren. And I'd walk down the street and places wouldn't, you know, they'd be closed. And the only places you'd see lines outside for were like McDonald's, Popeyes, you know, cheap stuff. Because it was the only cheap stuff left, because everywhere else was selling like $9 burritos. And I don't really care necessarily where people go. It's just when people say New York is dead, like, it wouldn't have been because of COVID. It would have been because of crazy developments that were made for money people who never intended to stay for very long. And, you know, I know that I personally, like, I've lived in New York forever, so there definitely will be a time in my life where I'll want to go somewhere else. I love LA. You can't be a local forever and stay in your own hometown, even if it is New York. But in terms of like people who say New York is dead, I mean, cities can't really live or die. You basically just, if your family's from there, like, it's irrelevant. Like,
Yeah.
New York could like not have a comedy scene and my mom would still live here and I'd still like this place. You know what
Oh
I mean?
yeah, it's just a stack of buildings on pavement, so it's always going to be around. But yeah, no one can judge any of these transplants who had to move home because they ran out of fucking money and they had to stay with their
No, I
parents who
agree.
don't happen to live in New York City. So any local who had to kind of, who is living with parents or something like that in their hometown of New York City totally cannot judge a transplant who had to move out. And there's some of us who can't. Like some of us can't even go home. I
Yeah.
think Emmy Potter is a funny former guest. She's like, I think she's from LA, and she's like, I haven't been there for a year, and it's like, I can't go back. And I think some of that has to do with not wanting to get people sick. Because you're going to be
Mhm.
on a plane, especially if
Of
you're going
course.
cross country, and you're not. I mean, you might pick it up on the fucking plane, and it's not like you're going to quarantine in a hotel for 2 weeks. Nobody's got money for that shit. But like, yeah, I mean, my parents are older, and so me going back to visit my dad, it's like I could get them sick.
Sure. I think it's really tough in a lot of ways. I think my issue primarily is people who left New York to go to like a second house because the rate was high and then came back on in a car is one thing, but like on a big crowded plane because the rate was low. It's like, well, you're just making the rate high again. So I think it's everyone's circumstance is different. I had plenty of friends who'd left New York, unfortunately, because the cost of living was pretty high and it was lower
Yeah.
somewhere else. And a lot of my friends, just like if they needed to fly back on an airplane to New York, they just had the good sense to not do that because they were not selfish and did not want to infect people. And I think that's the hard thing is like, I do think there is some element of when people move to New York, like there is, I've spoken about this on other podcasts, like there is culture here like in any other city. Like if I go to Spain, I'm not going to expect to know, I'm going to be like, hey, like I'm going to follow your lead. So if you've lived in Spain forever, like I want to know the way you cross the street. I want to know what time you go to dinner. I'm not going to force my life on someone else.
Right.
And I think that's when people do move here, they treat New York as if it's this blank canvas. Like, this is where I'm coming to pursue my dream because I'm the main character. And
I'm the Serena.
I'm the I am Serena Vander. Serena would, and just so you know, all those Gossip Girl characters, to bring it around, maybe they're from New York. None of them would be in New York. They all would have fled. They'd be in the Hamptons still. No,
totally.
no doubt about it. Forget it.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to the question. So Gabby Jordan Brown doing stand up with her visor, like, what Gossip Girl character are you as a comedian?
Oh,
putting you on the spot. Yeah.
That is an incredible question, and I'm so happy
I've been
you
thinking
asked
about it a lot. Yeah, I've been thinking about it like crazy.
I've thought about it before, actually. I really relate to Kelly Rutherford's character, Lily Bass, and it's not because I'm rich like her, but she just has this crazy quality about her where like anytime it even looks like someone in her life needs like protecting, she will do it. And I'm not saying this about myself to like make me sound good. Like I am very overprotective of my friends and loved ones in a way that I probably don't need to be and is probably worse for the situation than it needs to be. Like if someone's being mean to someone in my life, I will be meaner to that person than the situation requires. And then my friend who I was trying to protect is like, what the hell? This was actually worse for me. And that's what Lily does in almost every situation she's in where she's trying to protect Serena or Eric. But I actually think the character on Gossip Girl I am most like was featured in only one episode. And he was this guy who was just a normie who went on a date with Blair, and then Blair got caught up in a scheme and asked if he wanted to join, and he went, okay. And I think that's me. I think that's my energy.
Is that gullibility or just kind of, is it gullibility or is it go with the flow?
Both. Both, 100%.
But I love it though, because I think I saw Lily Vanderwoodson, aka Kelly Rutherford. I think I saw her in real life, and I thought she was on Fifth or Seventh Avenue, like the one with all the shishi boutiques. And I'm like, exactly, that's where she would be. But it's so funny because if you go see Gordon Jabby Brown, Gabby Jordan Brown, yeah, Gabby Jordan Brown at either Anne Hathaway Presents or A Night of Funny Jokes, you're gonna find out that maybe she's vindictive, but it's out of love for her friends and family. And she's also
never
go with
been
the flow.
introduced so well. That's incredible.
And also she's go with the flow or gullible, so you can probably rope her into her multi-level marketing scheme. So Gabby Jordan Brown, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, yeah. Rope me into your MLM and follow my stand-up.